nowadays and how the economic system works, companies and employees, that burden of skill development has been thrust upon the worker. So it's very much like in professional sports. So those with the higher skills get to command in terms of salaries, and companies are looking to go and get the talent today versus taking talent and spending 5-6 years down the road to development. And that's what's fundamentally changed. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Ascending Thoughts. I am your host, William Rogers, and I am here with my co-host, Bryan Ragland.
How's it going, everyone? Like William said, we are presenting the podcast here for Ascending Thoughts to help out people, individuals, business owners, entrepreneurs.
Just basically, we're living in such tumultuous times, and we are here to teach people ways how to assail above and overcome these challenges to greater success throughout their life in personal and business.
Yeah, and Bryan, that's all one wants is just a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of help and stuff like that. And I think that we can facilitate that.
Bryan, earlier, I think you and I were, as we were just talking about, and I think that just some of the things has just been bugging people in their mind, and a lot of a lot of people, in your age is just trying to get a little handle and work life, or what's been going on?
Yeah. For me, being a young professional, out of college for a few years and stuff like that. I've been really thinking lately about the work-life balance, for me personally, but also, with you, William. What can we do as individuals and people to better help us get to where we want to be professionally, and then also interpersonally?
Well, Bryan, a lot of times when we use the term work-life balance, it oftentimes, number one, means different things to different people, and as well as when they're in different age sets. So as you and your friends in terms of, mid to late 20s versus those in their early 30s or in 40s, there's usually something that's pressing and bugging us. It could be when you're remembering and trying to start out, and you're in college or you've graduated, one of those primary concerns, and when we feel that balance is we really want to be independent. We want to get out on our own. And so when I hear in terms of in that theme, it's that pressure. When we call that work-life balance, it's often terms of kind of code, and when we pull back, the veil a little bit is, I feel like I'm not making enough to kind of be independent because I want to get out of my parents' house, or I would like to go and get an apartment. And, I'm going around town and it's just so damn expensive out there. It's like $3,000 a month. It's going to take 50% of my paycheck. So that anxiety is what we try to verbalize as that work-life balance step one, because you're like thinking, geez, if I'm like 27 and half of every check is just going to rent, I got to go pay my utilities. I got to have food. What kind of life am I going to have? I can't even go out on a weekend and go get a beer with friends or in terms of date. And so oftentimes the financial piece is the more pressing and where we're trying to get into that work-life balance. How do you see it?
Yeah, I see it the same way, with the financial side of things and stuff like that, of being, having the college degree, and then, you get the big boy job working and stuff like that. And then, it gets down to it at the end of the day, and you're like, wow, the financial pressure nowadays is so heavy on my shoulders.
Right.
And it sometimes gets to a point for so many people where it's like you're living a life, but you're not reaching your full potential. You're not experiencing life. You're just existing and existing it as opposed to living it. And I'm just trying to think and compartmentalize how can we and what can we do as people to get to that.
As people get older, Bryan, the term that people have, and especially when they start having family and kids, is they use the term a lot, living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
Or hand to mouth, meaning that I'm covering bills, I'm kind of getting by, but I'm not gaining any little altitude, because a lot of times when people visualize in their minds, we don't have necessarily a grand delusion that we're trying to get jewelry, we're trying to get these big luxurious homes. A lot of people psychologically, when they say is, I want to feel that middle class, is that there are a couple of luxuries. I'd like to take maybe a trip with the family once a year, would like to have a little bit of some savings for some emergency, and be able to go out and do a few things, whether you want to go see, the Chargers game, you want to go see the Padres game, but we call a little of those few extras. That's usually the definition. The fundamental challenge, what has happened is in terms of in society, we act in a very robotic way. And what do I mean when we act in terms of robotic is that a lot of society and the way that we're raised in terms of brought up in terms of our culture is we're supposed to do certain things and we're supposed to get us what's called a social bargain or social contract. So we were taught and raised early on is in terms of kids, go to school, go get good grades, aspire to get to college, graduate with a degree. If you do these things, you will get X. As time has gone on, and not just your generation, is back when I was and back prior to me, more and more of what we call that part of the social contract has broken down. Because a lot of times what's happened in terms of generationally, if we go back to your parents and my parents, they would have had a lifelong career at a company. But now because of how a lot of times how it works in the work-life balance, it's very much like professional sports. It's free agency. You go work a year or two, then you go somewhere else. So because of a lot of this promiscuity within the job market, you're not getting in terms of what we call a social contract, meaning I'm getting you out of college. Now I am going to invest in you, me as a company, that you're going to be a lifer and invest to grow your skills. Because one of the biggest challenges in our earning ability over the trajectory of our lifetime is skills development. Mm-hmm. Going to college, we do that socially because we're trying to go and make in terms of a statement, and how we've been raised for a large part is we're trying to be serious and go into a workforce. But when we go into specific industries, whether you're an engineer, you're going out into software, you're going out medical, whatever that it is, it's not industry specific. So many people and young professionals in yourselves is, well, I did it in the college part, but now I got to start paying $125,000 in student loan. And now you're telling me I don't have all these skills, and now I got to go in another 5 years. And it just feels in terms of daunting. Mm-hmm. And so the part of it's broken down is that companies as well as employers are not getting back into how do we reform or re-engineer a modern day social contract. Because prior, what would have happened 30, 40 years ago is that companies would have also started invested in you in developing more specific skills. So whether it was blue collar like a welder and you became a master welder in construction and you went from a carpenter to heavy equipment engineering, the analogy that's important is you're growing your skills over the time you're working at companies. So the company is getting better, they're getting more productivity, but your wages are going up. So it's a win-win. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, and how the economic system works, companies and employees, that burden of skill development has been thrust upon the worker. So it's very much like in professional sports. So those with the higher skills get to command in terms of salaries, and companies are looking to go and get the talent today versus taking talent and spending 5-6 years down the road to development. And that's what's fundamentally changed.
Yeah. And that's a good point for that topic. Reflecting on that, where you spoke about now people are moving from job to job, 1-2 years and such and everything. And so are companies leery about really investing in employees, whether it's, more skills and stuff?
You would be. I mean, just think about it. Let's put ourselves in a company's position. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest considerations when you come out of college is whether to go get a master's degree or not. Most master's degrees in the business areas versus other areas are predominantly paid by companies. So when you go and get a master's degree in business, most that try to go in try to get some sort of employer reimbursement. And MBA programs right now are north of $150,000. And so to make $150,000 commitment and that you're not necessarily that the employee is going to have the commitment that they're going to be staying 10 plus years. So the bottom line is there's a lot of mistrust going on. And so therefore you're going to have this inherent distortion that exists today. Companies are going to go and look for those skills that they have today, not for tomorrow. The problem what that means is in terms of society, Bryan, is that we have this massive mismatch that goes on. And what does that mean in economic terms is that if you'll go out and look at the number of job listings and Bureau of Labor Statistics starts analyzing this type of data, they'll come up with, say, well, there's approximately more or less over this past year between 10 and 12 million open jobs available. But the problem is that when you're looking in terms of all the people looking that it's 8 million, well, that would be net 4 million, right? Well, what's the problem? Problem is the people looking and the jobs available don't match.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we're not doing as a collective whole, as individuals in society, because much of it is we're very inward focused. Companies want to focus on profit today. You need to provide a living for your family, and no one's working together to build, in terms of what we call synergy as well as society. Do we subsidize student loans? Should we have free community colleges, free 4-year degrees? We have to think holistically to fundamentally rectify these sorts of problems if we're going to make any dent. Mm-hmm. Because if we try to do it individually, we're going to continue to perpetuate what we have. You're going to have some winners and a lot of losers. That essentially happens.
Yeah, the hole's just going to get deeper.
Yeah, you'll have a fundamentally system that's broken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And another word that I was thinking of is you said the word trust. Trust between employers and employees, but also trust between people.
People, society, it's all what we call all dynamics and stakeholders. Mm-hmm. That is the glue that when you think that if you visualize kind of like as a flywheel, mm-hmm. and as the flywheel goes, like when you notice in terms of a gerbil or hamster running, the faster it goes, the faster it turns. That's an engine of synergy within a company, a community, a nation. And when people are pulling in different directions, you don't get anything done. I mean, mm-hmm. when we talk about in Congress, we talk about a state legislature, you look at a university, you look at a company, you look at a family unit. Mm-hmm. And those, when trust and consensus building and having common ideals and principles in what you're trying to achieve and accomplish. Because that's what fundamentally gets broken down. Because fundamentally to go and truly radically transform our lives and improve our current economic prospects, we have to go out and build towards common ideals to where you can create a situation, take for example in a company, rising profits that everyone benefits and not just a select few. Mm-hmm. And when you have in that, you're not going to have everyone vested in it because they're going to be like, you're going to come into a situation in my company like, why the hell I give a damn? You're out getting new cars, you're doing vacations Caribbean, and I'm barely getting by at $21 an hour, and gas is $7 an hour. I don't give a damn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you're not going to win that way. You have to get everyone in that if we're going up, you're going up, mm-hmm. and because there's no trust, that's what's happening. You have to have trust, and you have to be transparent, and you have to bring people in and show them and make those connections that as we're going up. So the whole principle is creating value and sharing in some of the value created. Therefore, we're not just a cost. Because when you go to business school, you see most traditional forms of management, we look at revenue and expenses. Mm-hmm. So therefore you're a cost. And what do I have to do as a manager? I got to manage costs. No, what we have to fundamentally change is how do we create new value? Because once we've created more, we have more to share. Then it's not a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and going off that, I want to talk about communication because that's such a fundamental facet in life. Whether it's with business or just people and friends and stuff like that. What do you think is good communication, and what do you think is the biggest challenge that I think people make in say the business side of things for communication between business owners and employees, or just, young entrepreneurs going into the business and trying to build that rapport and communicate with other people?
When you're working in terms of a group of people, think about your family, think about when you're in a company, think about when you're in government. The one missing piece is transparency.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when people work in companies, and think about this, in your own family context, you constantly have a tug and pull. If you basically, like, your parents are saying, hey, we can't afford this, you can't afford that. The same issues, same discussions are going on in companies. Nobody knows what the other person knows. Mm-hmm. So the trouble is that people aren't presenting financial statements. They're not quantifying things and showing it in a form of black and white so that you can see and show and demonstrate people, this is what the cost of this is. For example, we've had these bad advertising campaigns. Many businesses that I advise will spend $650,000 or more. And that's a lot of lost opportunity by not being serious and also tracking the results and productivity versus a medium versus just, we just went and spent it and who cares? Mm-hmm. The same thing is in terms of when people are looking at, their overall employee in terms of, when we say in terms of productivity, that if there's overtime, if people are out sick and that the company's paying it, the cost of benefits and cost of that, the key takeaway is by companies sharing in terms of the transparency. Secondly, you have to tie to that. It's one thing I've showed you the numbers, but this is what we need to achieve. So you need to tie the two together so that what we want to achieve. And thirdly, you want to incentivize. Mm-hmm. Because we're always here trying to basically, a lot of times we use carrot and stick. It's not like, you wasted $50,000. Also true is we have $50,000 going away, but look, if we're able to save, now we have better wherewithal that maybe we could have just increased people's pay somewhat. Mm-hmm. We could have paid for health care for everyone or have a dental plan. So that's what I'm saying is the juxtapositioning and going on of how to utilize in terms of transparency, because we're trying to get everyone to see equally versus being at odds with one another.
Yeah. It's not a me versus you. We're in this.
It has to become a we. It has to become a we. It's a we. And too much the way we are, and this is a very, very American culture idea, is we're very individualistic. Mm-hmm. And as much as what makes us great as a country and historically, it's also an Achilles heel. And what people have to realize is that a lot of aspects in what people aspire and idolize about American culture and American history, there are also some very serious flaws. And one of the biggest flaws culturally versus when you travel to other countries, you especially see in Asian culture, you see in Germany and others, is that we're very individualistic, very egotistical, where in other countries know how to work collectively in terms of in a unit. And that is very much knowing in different roles that we work in, there's different roles and boundaries, right? I as my individual and my, how I feel. And then when I'm working in terms of as part of a group, a company, whether it's your role in terms of family, it's thinking beyond ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that often becomes a very big challenge in what's going on today in companies is that you're dealing essentially with a collective of individuals trying to get people to, it's a consent and a belief of a submittal to thinking beyond ourselves, but to think in the best interests of a whole. Mm-hmm. But under the belief, the leap of faith that we're taking, if we do that, we will all be better off. And that's the part where the trust is broken down because people are not seeing the fruit bear their way. So there is a cynicism that's out there. So that's why transparency is key.
Mm-hmm. I think that going off on that, you mentioned some great points and stuff like that. And for me, reflecting on that, I can see that we do have a cultural shift from, say, the last generation, stuff like that with, you have the worker bees and then you have the bosses and stuff like that. But now I see that you're mentioning that shift of a greater good for the company, for everybody together. And I think that's just going to take time.
Part of it takes time, but it's leadership. In order to get things done, whenever times people refer to other eras, you have to look in the backdrop of the context of what was going on in the bigger society. So a lot of times what was analogous in those era was that people in the time of World War II in a worldwide conflict didn't see that it was right for them to think about their own selfish interests. They thought about a we, but not just as Americans, but in terms of a global, in terms of concern, as, the United States, the Allies were battling Nazi Germany as well as Japan. The point that I'm taking away is that a lot of times events and what happens shapes our attitudes. I do remember vividly how prior to September 11th, and after, how people's attitudes in general, kind of shifted. There was this massive amount of people just afterwards who volunteered, in terms of the military and service because they felt like that there was a calling. Much of it is just how we, in terms of society and when we process and what we're going on. COVID, you'd think would have been one of those opportunities that we should have been unified. It's unfortunate that it became more divisive, but when you kind of look back in times, sometimes it's the events that's going on the day that brings us together and others drive us apart. But what we really have to do is we really have to break down divisiveness. There is too much divisiveness and vitriol in this country, and it's infecting so many other areas when you see whether it's in politics, but you're seeing it in companies, you're seeing it in families, you're seeing it in friend relationships. And how can you get anything done when you have divisiveness?
Yeah. Yeah, seeing on a micro level is just like, it's just awestruck in me, and I'm just like, now it's, it's demeaning and it's negative and it's putting negative waves in me and stuff. And I see it, and, nobody wants a part of that.
No one wants a part of it. But the fundamental issue when we talk about a plague affecting us every day is we're all trying to get by and do better, because we're all affected. If it's $7 a gallon to go fill up the tank around the corner over here at Mobile, and you see your utility bills going up, and when your lease is going to renew and your rent's going to go up another $500 a month, we're all in the same boat. So therefore, because we're on the same boat and realizing that, we have to figure out how we grow faster than inflation. We don't control the levers of global energy supply. We don't control interest rates. Many of the factors that we are subjected to are outside of our control. But what we have to do as people, we get to choose how we spend, how we use our money. But when we're going in terms of working in these companies and building a business, we have to align ourselves as how we're going to continue to grow and create more revenue opportunities over and above inflation. It's the only other solution.
Yeah. And the only way to do it is just get people that you trust.
You have to trust, and you have to work for a unit, and you have to truly care for each other.
Yeah, deep down. And I think every person deep down, they feel that they care about that person next to them. And that's how it should be when you're with a company,
And then thirdly, build those sort of incentives that if we all do grow and we're able to grow a bigger pie, how people can share in that. It just can't be
the pie gets bigger and then this person gets more.
Well, in most traditional contexts, what happens is the owner basically gets all of the spoils, and in traditional economics and capitalism, we justify it because they take the risk, which makes sense. The challenge is in today's modern era in the 21st century, we need legions of people. It's not capital anymore. In 1922, we had big factories. We made things. In 2022, fast forward 100 years, not making cars, we're making digital goods. We're using brain power. Therefore, we have to take the human talents and intellect together and drive towards something of a greater good. So we can't be beholden in what we have to call out, that we have to dictate everything that we do in society, politics, are based on beliefs and principles set 100 years ago. We need to fast forward to a world that we live in today.
Yeah, that's good. Slowly wrapping up a little bit, what are some key takeaways? I know we discussed earlier on about trusting people and stuff like that, and then the inclusivity and having everybody together in the company and stuff like that. What do you think are some key takeaways here that we spoke about and that we touched up on? If you want to have some wrap up points to go off of.
Well, in terms of the work-life balance that we're discussing is trying to specifically articulate which of those areas is that we're just basically feeling, pulled out of control.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, it is strictly a time management aspect that they feel that they're, consuming more time in terms of, on work or in other areas versus, being able to spend with family or on their own personal care. So it's that inventory. But from most of what I hear in the feedback and in interacting, with people out there and like yourselves, the fundamental, I would say, issue when we talk about the work-life balance is still financial worry.
Yeah.
And how to go and overcome the financial worry. And my standpoint and throughout in terms of my career as being a business and financial advisor is basically how we grow our income.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's your only tool. You cannot cut your way out to prosperity. I mean, there are all the times when you're listening to all the personal finance gurus, we continuously hear you got to get out of debt.
Budget.
Which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Cut your Netflix subscription, Spotify and all that. And then what? What we have to do is fundamentally is how we grow our overall ability to make money. And then with that, utilize the ability to diversify our sources of income.
Mm-hmm.
But to diversify our sources of income, we also have to kind of grow our income. They go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. And a part of that is understanding the knowledge to get those new sources
skills
of income.
Development.
And then the
Number
skills
one, and where you're aligning and where you're staking your ground is you are a young professional, the industry that you're going in and trying to find out. We were talking about in those different analogies, whether you're out dating or anything out there, is the whole point is too many people are trying to play the game like everyone else. You need to go and find out that untapped area of blue ocean where no one else is, so that you can see the new upcoming opportunity that everyone's missed. That's the value opportunity.
Yeah.
Then by creating that value, you have the opportunity to capture a lot of that value created. That's how there are those who go from the meager amount up to here in that sort of hockey stick like growth. And so in going finding those new and emerging opportunities is how, a young professional like yourself who might go in position, whether you look strategically in a career in a company that has a potential that you go and get stock options that can eventually grow and become IPO, that not only that you can get, a very well-paying job, but you can also have a little bit of a wealth effect as well.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of being strategic about industries and what kind of skills that you're going to need, to kind of go and embed yourself in that.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Is there any other final points that you'd like to make apparent other than, with the communication with people and stuff and companies and employees to bring that together so that everybody is working as a unit in a cohesion, just like a beehive, everybody's working together to create all that honey and to have everybody share it?
I think the way to start these conversations is how people can start to look inward and wherever they are in whatever role in a company is thinking of ideas of how they can make things better. Meaning skills they'd like to learn or things that they could do to contribute to the common good instead of waiting to receive. We need to start taking the action as people and seeing what happens.
Yeah. Being proactive.
Being proactive in the company. And maybe some will be receptive. Maybe some will buy on those ideas. Maybe some in terms of now you can have the bargaining power to go and ask for, if I create these savings, I should get X. take in terms of chance. And others, if they're not receptive, maybe it's not right for you, and then you need to go look elsewhere. But my biggest takeaway is start with what you can do and utilize those ideas and how you can grow your skills and improve your company, and share and starting those conversations, change the dialogue.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's such a nice thing to hear from, another person that's talking about the greater good and stuff like that from a human aspect, because we're naturally, as human beings, we want to, look ourselves in the mirror and say, hey, I did something. I did this. I can provide for myself. I can provide for my family. Take some serious moral inventory of yourselves. And, everybody has their positives, everybody has their negatives, but, striving for perfection, everybody wants to be perfect and stuff like that. But what if we are to, strive for progress every day? Nobody's going to be perfect, and we have to realize that. But if we can strive, whether it's a daily occurrence, or every week or something like that, no matter if it's, health or fitness or to business, strive for progress and look for that instead of perfection. And then I think that we're going to get there, and we can definitely help ourselves out.
Yeah, that's the definition of what we call excellence. Mm-hmm. Because when you have the opportunity, you ever see a world-class sports organization, you go to NASA, you see military, we see these examples of these heralded institutions. There's a buzz, there's a special magic that you just kind of feel, that you see in terms of in the air. And these are all the makings and trappings of how you create that sort of an organization. And so you have to be embodied by ideals, but you also have to drive through a common mission. And that's what's fundamentally broken when we go about, and in terms of in our daily lives, and what is so, in terms of timely about today's topic, is that what are we doing? What's our purpose? Why are we in business? Who are we trying to serve? Who are we trying to achieve? I remember early on when I was at USC, and we were, studying in terms of various business cases. And a lot of, in terms of the time is you're studying the upstart computer industry. They hailed Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, but there are very simple takeaways in terms of the focus and zeal. Like, for example, I remember that always stuck with me, that Bill Gates' mission was to get a computer on every desk in every office around the world. What was meaning was, at the time, the problem was computers existed for decades, but they were extremely expensive. So it only meant that large corporations would have a computer, but not in a home. It just wasn't affordable. So he made it a mission to get to a price point so that everyone can afford it. Well, lo and behold, people have multiple devices. So you see how the world's radically changed. But you can see what can happen culturally, business, economically, when we have a clear set out mission and we all drive to it. And what they were as an upstart in a garage, how it becomes a world renowned organization, just in terms of in one of those takeaways. And it's just trying to find that mission. What are we all striving towards every single day?
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. I think we've covered quite a bit of things here for our first podcast, to be honest with you. Did you want to talk about anything else, that's ranting, chomping at the bit, or anything like that?
No, just, in terms of here, thank you for this broadcast, and we look forward to, in terms of, some future shows, to basically talk about, issues of the time, and talk about how and provide ideas of how people can ascend to greater heights in their personal and business lives.
Yeah, just another way to just get knowledge into people's brains and stuff like that, just to get them, thinking outside the box.
Like you said before. My fundamental mission in Guiding Light as a business advisor, and as well as a person, a human being, is that we need to break down this divisiveness. There's a lot of vitriol, you feel in terms of social media, we're pitting everyone together, and how tribalistic. And at the end of the day, we're going to continuously have massive disruptive events. They're not going away. That's the common theme. if you go back 10 years ago, we had a massive financial crash in 2008. We had a worldwide, pandemic and COVID, or we potentially may have a, regional global conflict out in Ukraine. We just don't know what the issue is, but we see the common theme. Mm-hmm. We need to work together for a common cause, greater above ourselves. Mm-hmm. If we're ever, all of us, going to fundamentally improve our lives and our lot. Otherwise, we're just going to be, withering around, growing frustrated, disillusioned, and just basically feeling left out.
Yeah. There's always going to be a new day tomorrow, and you're either on the wagon or you're getting left
behind. And all
behind.
that I have, what I want to contribute to the public discourse in terms of in that is how we can think strategically to overcome. Yeah,
and be a better person than you were yesterday. Mm-hmm. That's what I can think about in the takeaway that I can think about for that. So
thank you.